Hello and welcome, folks. Max from Woodsman's Finest here. Welcome to another episode in my grip to tip series. Today we're talking about part 2, which is the second bow in my line of favorite ILF risers to date. And without further ado, we're going to talk about my Frankenbow, the WF19 by CD Archery, with a pair of good old, made by Samick, Tradtech, I think, carbon extreme limbs. So this is a dear favorite of mine, so stay tuned. Hello folks, Max from Woodsman's Finest here. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're talking about my Frankenbow, and if I say Frankenbow, I mean that in the most endearing way. I brought you out here to one of my favorite places in Austria, Traunstein here. This is just about 15 minutes drive from my home. An absolutely stunning place, a fjord lake with beautiful mountains around, and I really hope that you enjoy. I took a long time to actually start making this video. I had this in my mind for several years, I guess, and this is one of my absolute mistakes that I make a lot. I'm just making it up in my mind so much, and I was waiting for a beautiful day like this to bring you out here and show you one of my favorite bows of all times for several reasons, and I hope you're gonna enjoy this. Now, the Frankenbow, the WF19 riser with a pair of carbon extreme limbs, good old, almost vintage at this point, you want to say, by Tradtech. A combination that I really like for several reasons, and without further ado, let's just get into it. If you like this content, folks, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Otherwise I don't reach any people, and that's been my experience over the last several years. The more you folks like and subscribe and comment, the more people are gonna be able to enjoy these videos. So as well, if you know a bowyer who might want to submit a bow to the channel for a grip to tip series test and review, let me know, or let them know, and if you want to connect us, that would be awesome. Of course, there is some terms and conditions, because there is always terms and conditions, and I am trying to keep these unbiased and as honest as I humanly am able to. Alright, now, I bought this riser from a guy who is not an unknown guy, I think, personally, in the traditional archery world. It's Wojo from TopHat, formerly from TopHat, and we talked for a while, quite a lot, and we got to talk about this bow, and here's a little anecdote. I didn't want to like this bow. I didn't want to like this riser at all. I thought, like, you know, over the years seeing it, I thought it was just like the craziest, ugliest looking thing I had ever seen, and I never wanted to own one. And now it's one of my favorite bows of all times, and that probably says a lot. Now, I got so intrigued over these, you know, seeing them on other folks and hearing a lot of good stuff about them, so that I actually got Wojo's you know, WF19. I think he had a second or even a third one, and one of them I bought from him. And then I got these limbs from my dear friend Alex Melnick as a gift, and I'm super grateful for that, because these are almost like a little secret, if you will. Before we talk about them a lot more, quickly over the setup, so you know what I'm running, and I think everybody is always kind of interested in whoever, you know, whatever everybody else is running. So this is obviously a 19-inch riser. I have a completely butchered R-core grip on here, as on all of my ILF bows. I'm gonna talk about this more in a couple minutes. Then I am running a push AccuTune, which is like it was made for this bow. Because of the hump, etc, etc. So this is an amazing piece of kit that allows me to very quickly tune my center shot, or running it with some type of springy rest or something, but without actually turning the plate, because it kind of moves in and out without turning the plate. So I love this thing. It's such an amazing piece of kit. What else are we running? Just a quickly braided wrist sling. I talk about wrist slings and finger slings a lot. It just elevates my shooting, my personal shooting, by about 30 or 40%, honestly. Just a quick, tiny stabilizer on the front, just a little bit of dampening, and it's just a nice way to fix the wrist sling to the bow. Sorry again about my voice. I'm still not over my man cold after several weeks. Maybe I should take it easy for a couple days, but ain't nobody got time for that. So sorry for my voice. And next thing I'm running on here, which is pretty fun, is a set of limb skins by One Stringer. And I extended them into the riser. I personally think it looks super, super cool. Now that's of course in the eye of the beholder, if you will, but I think it kind of really complements the bow and like the transition into the limbs very well. I love the Kuiu Verde number 2. So these I got from One Stringer, and of course One Stringer as well on my arrows, but about that in a couple of minutes. So they're also a kind sponsor of the show, if you will, and I'm happy to be a pro shooter for them. What else? On the limbs there's a bunch of very old school limb savers. I don't even know if they make them still, but they're also kind of this, you know, like the sand color. They used to be OD green, I think, but it's kind of washed out over the years. So these are definitely helping. And then I have a very, very bastardized and butchered, I think, Thunderhorn quiver on here. It's a little bit heavier than my Eagle Flights. I talk about the Eagle Flight a lot, that it doesn't mess with the balance of my bow, and that is definitely not really the case on here. I'm getting a little bit of a cant out of it, but that's okay because I shoot this bow, of course, with my fixed scroll with a slight cant, so it's alright. But I gave it a little bit of a, I don't even know what I want to call this, some like of my own leather work, and I messed around with some dye and put on a pretty fun, pretty crazy looking quiver on here. So it kind of complements the entire Frankenbow steampunkish look of this setup, and you know, I tried to make it as individual as I could. So I think this is about it in terms of arrows. And rather than putting that into the middle of the video, I am actually running a new shaft for me, which is the Easton 6.5 millimeters, and this one is the classic version. I actually just did a quick review about this, so I'm gonna put the whatever, I don't even know which side it is, but you know, that's what people on YouTube always do. They point to one corner and then they say I'm gonna put a link in the up there, and then in the show notes or whatever, but there's gonna be a card up there somewhere. So I'm running these 340 spine. It's a 600 grain arrow, so it's, you know, it's lobbing that log thing here into animals rather than anything else. That's fine. I run 50 pounds on the bow. I'm running, of course, TopHat components up front, 200 grains, 60 grains stainless insert, a protection collar, then of course One Stringer wraps, in this case with as bright pink fletching as possible, to keep it really fun for you guys to watch them fly, and an AAE Mini Max fletch, helical fletch on here that also makes them really spin fun towards the target. Sorry guys, like there's a beautiful mountain behind me and I can't even really show it to you because it's so bright right now that I would just be a completely black blob. Last thing I want to point out as well for setup is, of course, a JS Custom strings. This string has been on this bow, and it was also on the bow that I shot my first steer with in 2020. This string is ancient and I just can't get it to break. It's, yeah, 652 Spectra as always, a monofilament center serving. I talked about that in several videos before. Love it, can't destroy it. Like I said, this has been on here for at least 3 years, 3.5 years. It's been on several bows, has been shot thousands and thousands of times. I've got cat whiskers on here on a 4th and a 5th of the string length. Does a really great job. And also, I remember now, this setup was also probably the one that I've shot my best 600 round with, which is very odd because, yeah, 62 inch overall bow, medium limbs on a 19 inch riser, 62 inches overall, about 50 pounds. and you can't kill the thing. Alright, so there was already a lot of information in here. I think these information parts are actually helpful. So they're not supposed to be just blind rambling into the camera. These are really supposed to give you an idea what I'm running, and maybe if you find the setup, you've seen the video and everything, cool and helpful and fun, then maybe it's gonna help you as well a little bit. Now, let's grip to tip this thing. As I said, Archery grip. Completely cut, bastardized, cut down to the riser in the middle, keeping some parts for nice hand placement and repeatability. I got a little bit of leather on here. The reason being, and that goes into one of the biggest things with the WF19, geometry wise, this thing is very straight. So not a lot of deflects. I measured it, it's very, very minimal. It's a very neutral, if you will, up and down riser, if you have a grip on. So taking a grip off, or in this case actually, excuse me, carving it out, gets my hand as far forward as possible, and I still keep some on it, so I have a really nice repeatable lifeline on here and a place to put my hand. Now going up, the hump makes this bow very, very special. This is one of the things that makes it special. It's an aluminum hump. It still has two burger holes, so they allow you still to run a classic button or plunger with a rest, if you will, or if you want to. But on here there is this hump that you can also shoot it off the shelf, but it gives the arrow a very distinct small area to rest on. Now, of course, like I said, the AccuTune by the Push Archery, another really kind supporter of the channel. Now, if we're moving out, we have the classic attachment in the rear and in the front for stabilizers, weights, etc., etc. But you don't really need this on this bow. This puppy is a hog. I'm holding probably about 3 kilos in my hand, 6.5 pounds, something like that, maybe less, maybe more, something around that. And I used to run this thing to stabilize, to counterbalance my quiver. I used to run this with a V bracket in the front that is actually for Olympic archers, and I had another weight. I'm trying to put a picture in here, by the way. I had a weight running on one side over here, an extra weight that balanced out the quiver, put the bow completely vertical, and then I had a weight up front, and I think it went up to like 8 pounds or something like that. It was ridiculous. I was not even willing to carry this across a 3D range anymore. Now, if we're running further up and down the bow, one thing that makes this thing, or the thing that makes it most distinguishable, I guess, and most like unique, is these crazy shovels up front. When I saw this bow the first time, I was like, I'm gonna not like this bow's look for the rest of my days. And I've definitely gotten over it, and just because it performs so well. These shovels move the weight of the bow distinctly forward, and that does away basically with the downside, if you will, of the less deflex. Now this bow, because of the less deflex and because of the limpet angles, the WF19 compared to the 21, which I'm also going to review at some point, has very aggressive limpet angles, and has a very, like I said, little deflex, very straight up and down. So it has the tendency to actually give you a little bit extra weight. So rather than running, limbs that are measured on a 25-inch riser, so you have to go 6 pounds up for the 6-inch less riser length. That's not quite true. So you're getting actually a little bit more weight out of that. So in general, I would say maybe 1 pound or 2. This bow is gonna pick up, but it's also, of course, gonna pick it up in terms of performance. Now, with a bow with that geometry, would you think it's very, very nervous. And I have to say, because of this shovel forward, these shovels here, this like weight forward design that does away with the downside of the less deflex, I was able to shoot my most consistent 300 rounds. I won 2 bare bow competitions last year in 3D in the area. Nothing major, but still against people with 25-inch risers, with like 36 pounds, you know, with rests and plungers and all of the other shenanigans. And I was running long limbs, made this a 64-inch bow. I was shooting over my hump, and I didn't have like 350 grain target arrows or something, or 3D arrows. I was running hunting arrows with 200 grains up front, about 550, 530 grains overall over the hump with my AccuTune, and with a fixed crawl where I removed the third knocking point to make it legal in bare bow, without a bow quiver, of course, and everything. So I was running this hunting setup at about 48 or 49 pounds in this bare bow class. And the bow, not me, but the bow is so stable and it is so forgiving because of its weird geometry that I felt that the bow did the major work in that for me. Not that I didn't, you know, shoot my best at that point. Maybe I was really well in training and all that, but the bow was forgiving me so many mistakes that I have and I do when I'm very nervous, which I usually am. So that is something I really want to point out with this bow. It has a weird geometry, but it does such a great job. Also, I've never had a bow in my life that is as tunable as this thing. Now, as long as I'm somewhere, you know, close to my perfect spine, this bow is spitting bare shafts, well, straight, and forgiving over the hump so regularly. I don't know what it is. Well, at least on the second one. The first one was a little bit of a screw up. It needs a very high knocking point because the hump's not given and I'm running a fixed crawl. So it runs a weirdly high knocking point, which is really funny. And I talk this with Alex all the time. These bows need a very high knocking point. However, I repeated that 3 times. However, I get not even over a rest or my nap center rest or something. I'm getting as consistent bare shaft flight and therefore as well fletched arrow flight as out of this bow. No matter if I have longbow limbs on here, long recurve limbs, medium recurve limbs, whatever it is. So if it sounds a little bit like I'm singing an ode to this bow, it's because I do. I'm not paid by CD Archery. I bought this bow myself, and I choose it. Now, would I carry it up a mountain for like some crazy, you know, backcountry hunting? Maybe, because if you would carry a rifle, it would be the same weight. If it's gonna, am I gonna drop it, like if I drop it down the mountain, is it gonna break? No. It's rather that if I get in trouble, and I need to defend my life from a bear, I'm probably gonna choose this bow to just like, you know, go to town, because this thing, like I said, is an absolute bazooka of a riser. It's indestructible. It's gonna be there with the cockroaches when all other life's gone. So much about the bow. There's not much else to say, but I really tried to squeeze the most important information for me into the part so far. The riser is amazing. It's really awesome. Another thing I want to point out is the ILF attachments and the hardware is as bomb-proof as everything else. And what I really, really like is that what is it, like a 1/4 inch Allen wrench is doing not only the tiller bolts but also the set screws on the back, which is not this kind of bulging out design, but it's basically just a real set screw. And that is great because it just reduces the amount of different crap I need to bring into the field. Also, as far as I can tell, the lateral limb adjustments of the stainless system, not brass but stainless, is, I think, a little bit thicker and a little bit bigger than on some other risers I have. So hardware wise, I have absolutely no qualms. That's that. This thing is awesome. Now, When it comes to the limbs, that's going to be a little bit of a shorter one because there's not so much to say about it, except for that these limb skins probably take away a little bit of performance, but I do not care. They're awesome. They really look fun. So this is a carbon and foam limb from an era when Samick was still doing the limbs for Tradtech, Lancaster Archery Tradtech, and as far as I know. And when also the engineers that then formed MK Korea, and please don't quote me on that, this is a little bit more rumors and gossip than anything. But before, it's probably true though, before the engineers from Samick went over to found MK Korea. So these limbs, in my opinion, are really from the golden era of Tradtech limbs. I mean, they were cheap compared to other limbs, but I find them to be very quick, have a nice consistent pull. They're also pretty beefy. They don't have a lot of a lot more weight than or let's say it like that. Compared to other limbs in the same price category, I think they were always ahead. I don't have any modern Tradtech Black Max limbs, so I can't compare them. So I don't know if they're better or worse or anything. I can just say for being probably a 10-year-old limb or something like that, the Black Max Extreme Carbons, I think they're called, I'm pretty darn impressed and super happy with them. Now, there's nothing else really to say about the limbs. They have this distinct color with the yellow and then of course foam carbon. You know, everything is well done. The limb tips are pretty beefy compared to modern limbs. They're definitely not as narrow as my beautiful MK limbs that I did, that I showed you in the last video. A very traditional old school limb design, nothing wrong with them, but together they form somewhat of a legendary combo because there's nothing else to say about this riser really than being a legend by now. The one and only, first of its kind, if you will, whatever other people do now. I don't really care, but when it comes to this type of design and this type of solution for the forward weight problem, this was, in my opinion, the first one to tackle it at least this way. Now, maybe people differ about that, but that's to the information that I have now. Additionally, these like old school limbs on this riser kind of make a combination that is maybe a little bit of steampunkish. Maybe it's not beautiful in everybody's eyes, but in my eyes, especially now with all of the scratches and dings and like the limb skins kind of like flaking off, and the absolutely horrendous quiver job that I did, I love this bow. It's my own little Frankenchild, and I really enjoy shooting it, and I'm never gonna get rid of it. It's a small one. Look it. There was some steel insert in here. Yeah, these 3D animals are not made for 600 grain hunting arrows, that's for sure. Now folks, thanks for tuning in. I really hope that you enjoy these videos, and thanks for tuning in for another episode in the Grip to Tip series. In this mini series here about my favorite ILF risers. I always try to take you across the 3D courses a little bit as well. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. I try to keep this short, but at the end of the day, I don't want to do any of these products disjustice or injustice or whatever you want to call that, because I try to wrap it up very quickly or make it short or whatever YouTube wants from me. I don't really care. YouTube has never really done anything for me, to be honest, over the years and making hundreds of videos. So I make the type of videos that I want to do, unbiased and unbought, if you will. And so I really hope that you enjoy that, and if you support that in any way, shape or form, I really appreciate it. Of course, my links to different Amazon shops, to my own tool line, my website, etc., etc., and of course my my Boon TV library, which is a course page for spoon carving, sharpening, leathercraft, etc., etc., is all down below. So I really appreciate that. Like I said, if you know a buyer or someone who would like to submit some product to the channel, get in touch with me. I always love that, of course, very much. Comment down below if you have any feedback or anything that you're interested in. I'm gonna keep on roaming here for a little bit longer and enjoy the evening. I hope you have a good one. Take care of yourself, and I'm gonna see you next time. Cheers.